Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee, rainy Williamson County. I'm with my best bud, Rodney Wilds, who is with First Bank, also in Williamson County, Tennessee. So if you're headed our way and you got questions, give us a call. Contact information is just in the description box below. You know how to do that. Rodney, is it raining where you are?
It's been raining off and on. I'm ready for some summer weather.
I'll tell you, it's rain. I live on the edge of a very small lake, but it's a lake, you know. And every time it rains, my lake fills up. That's how small it is, you know. So, but today it's full. We had rain coming through, so stuff is happening in the real estate market. This real estate reality check. What we're all about here is just sharing information, giving you our opinions on stuff. We've both been in the industry. I've been in about 20 years, and Rodney's longer than that in the lending industry. I only found out that his mother was in. I didn't know that. I thought that was very cool. Hi, somebody's here. Thumbs up to you too. And today's topic here's the idea of my topic today. The shifting housing market, and there's a lot of things that are changing, but there's 3 articles we pull. Hi, Angie. Good morning to you, our California friend. What we do is we pull articles that's going on in the national news about different topics, and today it's about the shifting housing topic. And the 3 things that caught my attention were, first, on a national basis, what's going on with the housing market in general, because you know what, when you get headlines about the market's getting ready to crash, I guess we're talking about that Gurley, our crash boy, you know, his last name is Gurley, Gerli. I wasn't being rude. Our Gurley guy. But he talks about crashing a lot. Well, on a national scale, that's not true everywhere. And so the first article is about the housing market is shifting, and they're going to try to explain it with a guy, and his name is Lance Lambert. He's been around a long time, really puts out good real estate articles. He's really a good writer. But anyway, so it's talking about the market shift and where it's happening the fastest. That's the first part. The second part is I'm going to get a little more specific, and that is about Florida, because Florida is really shifting. That's where a few years ago, everybody and their sister wanted to move to Florida because why not? That's a place to go. But things are changing down in Florida. We'll talk about that article for a second. And then the third article brings it a little more home, and that's about how home sellers are pricing unrealistically. I'm just going to use that word, that the price cuts have skyrocketed. So we've got nationwide, we've got localized, meaning southern belt there, Florida, and then real close on local. So do you have anything to kick us off, like with rates or anything right yet, Rodney, or what are we doing?
Let's jump right in.
Jump right in.
Talk about the housing shift.
Okay, let's talk about that. Here we go. I'm going to move this over. Bing, okay. Housing market shift. The pandemic housing boom was too much too fast, and now we're in an affordability constrained housing market, and it's driving up the number of active listings for sale. We've got listings all over the place, and that includes here in Williamson County. Doesn't mean that we're having any difficulties really, but the listing count is up compared to the pre-pandemic. It's up locally from what it's been. And that normally what would happen if you have more listings like that prices would soften. They generally do, but the buyers have been so beat up with real estate, with interest rates and stuff like that they're not coming out to buy. So it's not softening as fast as you would think. So during the pandemic housing, this may seem like old news, but we're going someplace. During the housing boom, housing demand surged rapidly among ultra-low interest rate stimulants and the remote work boom, which increased demand for space and unlocked a WFH arbitrage. I'm not exactly sure what that means. The Federal Reserve, do you know what that means?
No, I was actually went through the article for the WFH arbitrage explanation.
Yeah, I tell you, Federal Reserve researchers estimate that new construction would have had to increase by 300% to absorb the pandemic era surge in demand. 300%. That's new builds. New builds. Unlike housing demand, this I found is really interesting, and I haven't thought about this enough. Unlike housing demand, housing stock supply isn't as elastic and can't ramp up as quickly. As a result, the heightened pandemic era demand drained the market of active inventory and overheated home prices, with U.S. home prices rising a staggering 43% between March 2020 and June 2022. While many commentators view active inventory and months of supply simply as measures of supply, Resi Club, this is a thing that Lance has started, sees them more as proxies for the supply-demand equilibrium. Because housing demand is more elastic than housing stock, large swings in active inventory or months of supply are usually driven by shifts in demand. And I mean, we see that. What is it that you watch for when we're talking about that elasticity there, Rodney? Is it pendings? It's applications for you, isn't it?
It is. It's more, well, I kind of watch it all. I kind of look for the applications uh, versus projections, and definitely we always look at inventory. Inventory is always a fascinating piece in our industry. It's it's either it's going one direction or the other. It's never kind of just stable. It's always looking to you know we're underserved, overserved, or something. Always.
Yeah, I just, it's amazing how when you watch pendings, how they rise and fall, contract cancellations, how they rise and fall, listing prices when they're dropping. And that's what our crash bro, he always talking about is pendings and how people will back out of contracts and how people are cutting listing prices because that's going on everywhere. And I'm going to show you a map here. Indeed, the ravenous housing, to get back to the article, trying to go too quick here, sorry. Indeed, during the ravenous housing demand at the height of the pandemic housing boom in 22, almost the entire country was at least 50% below pre-pandemic 2019 active inventory. Here's what that looked like. I mean, the brown is active inventory below pre-pandemic levels. I mean, that's a lot of brown. That is a lot. I mean, no wonder prices were going up. Good God, Rodney. And you can just see a couple of spaces there in Texas, which turned out to be, I believe those are hot spots now. The active, so of course, now it's a different picture. National active inventory is on a multi-year rise, not long after the mortgage rate spiked in 22, causing affordability to reflect the reality of the sharp home price increases during the pandemic housing boom, and return to office gained a bit of momentum. National demand national demand in the for sale market pulled back, and the pandemic housing boom fizzled out. It wasn't so long ago that people started getting called back to offices, and people who had originally done the remote stuff and they had bought out in the boonies someplace. Now they're trying to sell their places to get closer to town. You must have have you seen a lot of that in your end of the industry? Have that stuff going on or no?
Yeah, well, we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot less of the work remote. The state moving, across the country kind of thing, and planting a new flag here from, wherever. So yeah, we've definitely seen a lot less of the, people. It's more of a normalized market. You see
Right.
some remote and a lot of local.
Right. And you happen to be in an industry where you do a lot of, I don't know that I'm breaching anything here. Do you guys do a lot of remote kind of stuff for you guys? Do you have that ability?
What do you mean?
Are
Like for our
are loan officers in general able to do some kind of remote work? I'm just asking.
Yeah, our whole company is you can do pieces of it are non-remote, but most of it is remote. For me, I have an office, but I choose not to go to it every day because
Right.
it's just for me it's not as productive as working from home. So yeah,
Yeah.
so the
And
loan
real estate,
officers that I have, they also work from home as well.
that's cool.
I
And
think I have one that goes into a bank branch, and the rest
oh,
of
is that
them
right?
work from home. Yeah.
I know for real estate, it's remote, but you've got to be in the area because that's the area you're servicing,
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, initially in the second, we're almost done with this article, but initially in the second half of 2022, this was interesting. And what's happening now, this is where it gets interesting for me. A couple of years ago, 22, 23, early 24, as the market was going through these shifts, we didn't have enough data to try to analyze that. That's why this article is interesting to me, because we're in the middle of it. And like I've told you stories before, when we went through the actual crash back in 2010 and that area, in our office, nobody knew that it was happening until it became more and more frequent. When one of the agents would come into the office and they say, "Hey, is your house been on the market longer than usual?" We'd start asking those, and everybody go, they are. We'd start to come to this slow recognition, and that's how
Yeah.
we learned that there was a crash in general, as buzz back in the office. At any rate, so now that we're a little further down the road, we can look back at the data and find out what's going on. So initially, in the second half of 22, this housing demand pullback triggered a free fever breaking in a number of markets, particularly the rate-sensitive West Coast, West Coast housing market, and in pandemic boom towns like Austin and Boise, Idaho. Which, figure out Boise. I'll figure that out. I mean, I've got to go see that place. Apparently, causing active inventory to spike and pushing those markets into correction mode in the second half of 2022. Actual correction mode is like 10% plus, I think is what that is. So heading into 23, many of those same Western and pandemic boomtown markets, excluding Austin, stabilized as the spring seasonal demand, we'll get to that in a second, coupled with the still active tight inventory levels, was enough to temporarily firm up the market. However, that period of national inventory stabilization didn't last, and now we're in the midst, this is big, of an 18-month streak of year-over-year increases in national active listings. Where the active inventory months of supply has risen the most, home buyers have gained the most leverage. Generally speaking, housing markets where inventory active listings has returned to pre-pandemic 2019 levels have experienced weaker home price growth or outright declines over the past 34 months. That's the kind of data that we can look at now and kind of make sense of it, don't you think, Rodney?
Yes, definitely.
Conversely, housing markets where inventory remains far below 2019 levels have, generally speaking, experienced stronger home growth over the past 34 months. Now, as for our area, it's I bet you if it's going to be 5% this year, it would be lucky. It's just soup. Call it flat, and like Rodney has always said, scraping along the bottom. That's really kind of what we're doing here. So here's this next chart. We'll get off of this one. This is how much it's changed. Brown is active inventory below pre-pandemic. Green is active inventory above pre-pandemic levels. And you can see that shift. That brown is really withdrawn quite a bit. Here's the comparison again. That's really amazing. That's amazing. And it's no wonder that the housing market is so soft. It's just an amazing thing. It's just a couple of more points and we'll get done. Here's the big picture. The housing market is still undergoing a process of normalization following the surge in housing demand during the pandemic housing boom, when house prices went up too fast, too quickly. To date, that normalization process has pushed some markets, including Austin, Las Vegas, Phoenix, San Francisco, Boise, Punta Gorda, that's got to be a nice place, Cape Coral and Tampa into correction mode. In some other areas so far, it's caused home price growth to stall out. Meanwhile, some markets still remain tight and have only seen a deceleration in home price growth from the highs of the pandemic housing boom. So the point is that things are slowing down across the country, but in this, he's talking about big chunks of turf that's slowing down. So do you have any overall thoughts to get me out of this spiral here, Rodney?
Well, I think the biggest point to it all is that it's still, you know, we're an affordability, kind of the article called it affordability constrained housing market. You know, in that first slide, you know, when it went crazy, what turned all that brown to, you know, non-active inventory is all the purchases and everything done, and all the rates and stuff were low. So thing is today the affordability crisis is still very much in play, and of course the active inventory is going to rise, and it's at some point we're going to get caught up to the pre-pandemic levels, and it looks like that's what we're doing now, is getting close to, in some areas, surpassing the pre-pandemic levels. But you know, it wouldn't be you if the rates were 4.5%, you could just show the map on fire, because the whole country would be crazy and low on inventory. But I think just adding that the housing it's affordability crisis that's behind the majority of this.
And that was one of the parts that really caught my attention on this particular article. And I don't know that I didn't know this, but I didn't really focus on the idea that the elasticity of it all. I mean, and you get to see that. I get to see that, where people, large groups of people, we saw that happen during the pandemic. It's elastic. A large group of people got off the fence and started buying houses. I mean, that's elasticity. And with that fixed demand or that fixed supply that we have, those prices are shooting up. And now what's happening, and we'll get to that in a second about Florida after we get past a couple of other things, how that changes so dramatically. We can watch the news, we can watch the 10-year note spike, and all of a sudden we're in trouble again. You know, everybody stops buying that kind of stuff. So, and she makes a point about Boise, which is, I needed to know. A lot of Californians moved to Idaho, especially people in construction. Lots of work, cheaper housing prices, and I mean it is a beautiful area. I'm big on mountains, and I'm pretty sure there's mountains in Boise, Idaho, isn't there? I think so. Being a Colorado guy, I think so too. So anyway, so that gets us started on, there's a shift going on. And the point I'm trying to take from this article, as we dig a little deeper into the causes and concerns for that, is that it's going to spread across the country until things normalize. And normalize, in my opinion, is we've got pent-up demand. We talk about that constantly. There's a lot of people want to buy houses, but what are the rates? Did they push back over 7 here recently, Rodney? Uh-oh. Buddy, we've lost your sound.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I hit my off button somehow. I don't know how I did that. This fake microphone right here is not.
So rates went up over 7. Did that happen?
No, I think they're still just below 7 for most programs.
Okay, but they did spike up a little bit. I'm not trying to make things worse than they are, but didn't that happen?
Yes. Now they have been consistent. Anytime we think we're going to get some good news and come around, it spiked back up. It's a lot of it's economics and world stage stuff versus just the Fed trying to keep the interest rates high or whatever it is. I mean, it's it's no longer yeah, predictable, so to speak. You know, it's kind of wild with all the stuff we have going on now that's affecting our interest rate environment.
Well, it's uncertainty. I mean, and that's what we talk about is uncertainty. And the only people that are certain that they're moving are people that are having life changes, going through relationship changes, job changes, things like that. You know, that recreational stuff we keep talking about. Not to belabor the topic, but it's true. We've hit I think we've, for the most part, other than the ultra rich, for the most part, we've hit the basis of everybody that's moving are the people that have to move. They're taking the mortgage rate hit because they got to go because it's a new job or whatever the case may be. This is our, be it good or bad, this is kind of our base number. You know, everything beyond this that's where the recreational buying starts to come up when the rates are 4% or whatever. So, you know what time it is now? After we get off that first one, let's get on into this Rodney's Riff. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All
right, fantastic, Andy. If you want to play that article for us, let's listen to it, and then we'll comment.
Okay, hang on. Make sure we gotta activate that. Good. Click. Done. Here we go.
Every 15-year-old kid should be doing this right now. If you're getting an allowance of $300 a month, buy a piece of real estate that pays you $30 a month. Only use the 30, don't touch the 300.
But how would a young, normal person get money?
Allowance, side jobs, side hustles. I was 14 years old. I was working every weekend. I was mowing lawns, doing whatever I could to get some extra money.
He's the
There
man.
we go. There we go. First, let me say, I think this guy, I've seen him get in an argument with one other guy, and I'm saying this because the guy's super successful. One of the guys was saying, I don't think that this guy's a billionaire. Okay. And it's probably true. He might not be a billionaire, but you know, if you're arguing or you're posing as a billionaire, you got a lot of money. So you've been super successful, right? I mean, the guy's off the charts successful with what he's made money doing. I think he sells how to make money in real estate or something like that. I think he sells stuff like that.
Tons of stuff.
Yeah. So where do I get started with this? Just kind of recap. He said every 15-year-old should be doing this. And if you're getting an allowance of $300 a month, buy a piece of real estate that makes you $30 a month, and only use the 30, not the 300. But I thought he kind of said use the 300 to buy a piece of property, and then he goes back and says only use the $30 you get from making off the real estate that you bought with your 300 a month. So there's a little bit to unpack here. First of all, Andy, help me out here. Who gets $300 in allowance? Like, I have 2 kids. Under no circumstance would I pay either one of them $300 a monthly allowance. That is,
I never did.
That is preposterous. And maybe I'm just a cheap parent, but that is crazy. And then you're going to buy, as a 15-year-old, you're going to buy a piece of real estate that makes you $30 a month. Again, the numbers don't work out. You know, you're getting $300. You've got $300 a month, and I don't know what you're going to be able to buy for that. It's not like you have a down payment on a piece of property or anything. So there's a lot. I have issues with a little bit of that right there. Like, first of all, who's going to loan you the money to buy the real estate? right? So you're 15 years old. You're going to walk into a bank, or you're going to go around and see Johnny, hard nose over there, and get some hard money lending. I don't understand that, but first of all, nobody's going to lend you the money to buy that real estate. A 15-year-old, I don't think. Maybe they can buy property. Maybe they can, but I don't know if you can sign a contract in Tennessee as a minor.
And then who's going to be taking care of it?
Yeah, the math doesn't work. Don't spend the 300. We've already spent it to buy the property to get $30 back. I think the kid would rather just have the $300 a month. But that's me. It's actually so ridiculous. You lose the point that I think he's trying to make. Because I love any hustle advice for young people, right? Like go out and mow lawns, go out and wash cars, clean your neighbor's gutter, whatever it can be. I love the hustle piece of this. Like there is no substitute for hustling. Like if you hustle, you can make money. There's plenty of things for kids to do to make money. Now, when I was a kid and we did some of this, most of that money was spent on car stereos or girlfriends or whatever it was. We weren't looking to invest it into real estate. But, and that's okay too. I think learning to work and learning to make money, that's a very important skill that's not taught and pushed very much in our youth. But the real estate idea is ridiculous. So this dude definitely needs a reality check for sure. For our real estate reality check, because he is off the mark with that. But let's look at some of the comments here. I don't know what I just did with the article. Do you have the article pulled up there?
I do. Just hard to see.
Yeah, let me see if I had it here for a second. Well, you can see you can see some of the notes there. Some of the comments are just really good. One of them said 300 allowance, buy real estate, got it. Don't forget to collect the $30 of income that magically comes from owning all that land. I like this one. If you're 12 and not making 300 a month in allowance, you need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, brush up on your negotiating skills, and make sure your dad is rich. Where can I buy something for $300 and get a $30 return? I'd love to know. There's some cussing in that one. Who the blank has a $300 allowance? And that's me. That's what I think.
Oh, I like this one. Grifter's going to grift.
Yeah. That's a weird amount to rich kid. That's too low, and to the rest of it, that seems really high. I don't know any kids gotten that kind of allowance. So, yeah, it feels like no matter where you are, $300 allowance is so far from reality that it's internationally outrageous. So not only was it outrageous for America, but internationally too.
We're outraged around the world.
Yeah. Allowance, you dumb poors haven't even tried being born into a rich, generous family. Losers. Yeah. No, what a dumb statement to make. No bank is going to finance a 15-year dude is delusional. Well, that's the easy one. Just have your parents co-sign.
You make them responsible.
Yeah. Uh, they're basically, again, it just continues on that line. But I think, you know, like I said, I think he lost his point of getting our younger generation to hustle. Um, yeah, so I'm going to just go back to the point of, hustling is it's it's not overrated. If someone outworks the competition, they're going to crush it, and no matter what field they go into. So I like that aspect of it. I like that he's talking about hustling, but he's way off the mark in whatever transact. He could have used a better analogy or something. So yeah, and look at our Angie there. Angie's her daughter. Angie, I don't know. You got to do better than that. This guy is
Can't buy a
doing
house on $20.
$20 is not cutting it. So you're gonna have to pump it up by about 180%, something like that, to get more than that. So whatever that number is, that's funny. Yeah, $300 is just crazy for an allowance. So enough of that. Enough of my riff or rant. Basically, I think the guy could have made a really good point about hustling, but he missed it, and that's why we're picking on him here, is because that's what we do.
That's what we're doing. Good job, Rodney. Let's beat up Grant Cardone, billionaire.
Yeah, listen, he, I hope he sees this and he's just like, you poor goats from Tennessee, leave me alone. I make more interest. My money makes more money than you do. So, but I won't say that I'm not on the internet saying ridiculous stuff, but not that ridiculous. Like,
it seemed to me that it seemed to me, and this isn't a defense of him, but it started out with just a hustle. If you're a kid, do something, make some money and save it. Live within your means, I think, is his bigger picture, but wandered off into buying a house somehow. So
yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to be Grant Cardone for a couple of days. He's got a very nice jet, I understand.
Yeah. See, yeah. I'm sure he's rich, and I'm sure he's got a lot of great ideas. That wasn't one of them.
I'm pretty soon you're going to see a course coming out by Grant Cardone, how to buy a house when you're 12. That's.
I'll take it. I'll have to see what the fuss is about.
All right. So we're going to jump back in real quick on this. Just a couple of points, and that I want to make. Moving on the shifting thing. When he's talking about I think that the principle that he's talking about is building wealth overall and real estate. I don't care. Forget the age we beat up on him enough, but anybody that wants to build wealth, real estate is a solid way to do that. That's how he did it, for better or for worse. That's what he did on that. Within that, so we have a shifting market. It's stuff that's going across the country. But where it's not working in one place is in in Florida. And I'm sorry, I can't share this screen. It's got a website that's particularly hoggish in terms of memory. So, but the southern states, Florida, residents desperate to escape, but homes won't sell as crash looms. You can tell that our crash bro is involved in this particular article because the word crash is in there, and he is at the end of it. But doesn't mean it's not a good point. After years of surging demand due to the pandemic real estate boom, the region's real estate market is now flooded with listings, in Florida, as desperate homeowners rush to sell amid soaring costs and vanishing buyers. There's so much here. According to a new report from Cotality, that's not a company I'm familiar with, the number of homes for sale across Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties has quadrupled since 2022, hitting the highest level in nearly a decade. And I suspect, would you agree with this, Rodney? Probably because a huge number of those homes are second or vacation homes. Wouldn't that be right? Probably.
I'd say both. I'd say it's I'd say it's only still, less than 20% or something, but yes, it's definitely it's going to affect the market when those start peeling out of there.
Hmm. The collapse in demand is much worse in other states due to some unique problems in their area. And we've all heard this on the news. Golly, panic selling is setting in. I don't know if that's the case. And this is colored by Crash Bro, Nick Gurley, again, not being mean. That's his name. But panic selling is setting in. You can tell they got it from his website. With residents spooked by skyrocketing HOA fees, I can relate to that, especially in the wake of the 2021 Surfside condo collapse. And this is where Angie was saying, if they get cheap enough, it might be nice to go to Florida. I'd live in Florida a heartbeat if it was by water and the price is right. I'm a water guy, The last 25 years have seen home prices, homeowners insurance, and property taxes surge in Florida, explains Selma Hebb, somebody with Cotility. Many households are finding it increasingly difficult to stay in the state. So Florida's fragile housing market can also be blamed on aging infrastructure, the collapse, and environmental threats. There's been this thing going around about hurricanes and coastal areas becoming particularly vulnerable, when the seas begin to rise because of chlorofluorocarbons in it. Hairspray. And anyway, so I mean, I think that's BS. But nonetheless, you've got to factor that in for those folks that lean that particular direction. More than 52,000 homes in those areas, zones we mentioned, were listed for sale in April. That's a huge jump, get this, from 12,825 listings during the peak of Florida's COVID and post-COVID migration boom. From 12 to 52,000 buyer's market. Florida residents pay the highest average home insurance premiums in the U.S. at $11,000 annually. Jeez. And I bet a lot of those aren't single family for that 11. I bet a lot of those are condos, Let's keep going here just for a minute and I'll get done. According to the experts, Florida is getting slammed with a combination of rising inventory, falling demand as people grow more desperate to flee. I think conversely, people are more averse to going there because of the high prices, high insurance, all the stuff. Stricter building regulations following the 2021 Surfside collapse are also driving sellers to the market because they're ending up footing the bill for long neglected repairs. Can you imagine that? Sky-high maintenance fees and insurance premiums are also causing homeowners to sell, according to the new report. Almost done. Labor shortages. That's, as I take a quick left turn, I like everything that's going on, but to imagine it's not going to affect with the deportation, that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be cryptic. Reality check, it's the deportation is what I'm talking about. Is there going to be labor shortages? Probably. I'm thinking, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I don't think that they're building at such a rate that they're having labor shortages. I think that when we're in a rising listing market, labor shortage isn't probably the culprit. It's still, I mean, the article right there said, I mean, if the insurance has gone 4 times the national average, averaging $11,000 a house, that's crazy. I mean, that's astronomical. So, I think I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really think the affordability issue is the main culprit within, why are people selling their investments in Florida? I've seen several friends that sold and they're making less money than they used to. They were still making money on their rentals, but they were making less money. So they just, maybe I'll just cash out, and that with that kind of thinking with the rising cost environment. And,
Yeah.
no way to manage that debt either. I mean, with the high interest rate environment. So
And chances
I
are pretty.
don't.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm not going to throw ice under the bus just yet with this, because I don't think that they're building at such a pace that they need, that they're crying for labor shortages like they're selling too fast.
Yeah, yeah. I think, um, and the truth be told, more than likely for the people for that 52,000 houses that are listed, for those that didn't buy in the heat of the uh, the boom, if they bought it any time before, like 2019, anything before that, they're going to pocket some pretty good change. I mean, they're going to be okay. Now, if you bought
Yeah.
mid 22, maybe not.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. But here's the final kind of the punchline for that particular Florida situation, and I'll sum up what I'm getting at. The report concludes that the housing boom in Florida has now fully boomeranged and now has gone in the complete opposite direction. Here's my point. We're talking about shifting markets and stuff. There can be different reasons why homes don't sell. And in this particular case, affordability certainly factors into it. But if I was making a pros and cons list of buying a home, comparing Florida to wherever else, if I was looking at insurance costs, that's going to like be definitely on a con. Does that make it less affordable? Yeah, it does. What about construction? These places falling apart. I mean, the one collapse that was tragic, but how much is that going to happen? Is that going to affect other condos in Florida? No idea. That's going to be on the list of I don't want that to happen either. There's just a number of things, a number of reasons why I wouldn't go to Florida based on these ideas. It's expensive, insurance, all the rest of it. Now, let's move into one other thing if we can.
I add some on regarding the that condo that crashed in 22 or 20, whenever that was,
Yes.
the towers in Surfside,
Yes.
Champagne Towers South in Surfside. That changed condos across America. That pretty much immediately changed how Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac handled condos immediately. It's a lot more difficult to do a condominium now because you have to, it can no longer have all this deferred maintenance or anything like that. And the budgets have to be good. So they've stepped in, and that's what, when they're talking about their HOA fees, we probably haven't seen the condos that's had, 15 or 20, 30, $40 million worth of repairs. And now they have to assess each unit in the homeowners association to get those repairs done. And I'm sure people are saying, well, I don't have the money. I mean, so it's causing all kinds of problems with condos. And especially in that area, that if they have them that's been around, it's dilapidated, and they've not had their upkeep done, very well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Now we may glitch. I'm going to close a couple of tabs here. So, okay. All right. So that leads us, as far as I'm concerned, with what we've been going through, and this has been it's a little bit sketchy the way I went through it. I'm sorry I wasn't more clear. But the shift in the housing market, all we're talking about is people are searching. Angie's got a really good point here. She's got a really good point. So basically the way it should have always been, keeping up on maintenance.
Yes.
That's a lesson learned too late, and it gets expensive when that happens, But what today's live stream was for me is trying to process what's going on, and I'm looking for certainty. And the only thing that I'm certain now of currently, and it not necessarily a bad thing, is that rates are still uncomfortably high for a lot of people, but they've been consistent. They haven't blasted way over 7, and I know Rodney would correct me on most that I think 7 is really exaggerating. It's probably 6.5, 6.6 for normal good credit people these days. 30-year conforming, is that probably pretty close? Is that right?
Yeah, it's close to that.
Something like that. But it's been real consistent. When I say 7, that's because that's just the way some of these places report that. So it's not necessarily getting worse. It's in the midst of all the stuff that's going on with the new presidency and all the changes. At least it's been consistently high, but it hasn't gone off the charts yet. So leaves us with one other thing, as far as I can see. We've gone from national, we've gone to the Florida thing where it's just, there's shifts going on down there that's going to be specific to that area for all the things we talked about. But now we're going to get to your block and my block and your city and their city. And that's where home sellers are pricing too high and not listening to the market. As a professional, I can tell you that that has happened for my entire career. Whenever I took listing appointments, that was the battle that we would end up having. And I don't mean that to be confrontational, but the discussion always stalled out at how much is my house worth? And so I'm going to read through some of this, but I'm not going to share the screen because it's a CPU hog. Home sellers are with unrealistic price expectations are setting themselves up for pain in a softening market that increasingly favors buyers, warns housing experts. What they're talking about simply is this: across the country, listing prices are being cut at tremendous rates now, not normal rates compared to what they used to be. Nationally, the share of home listings with price reductions hit another multi-year high in April, just last month, indicating that sellers are increasingly overestimating what their house will fetch in the current market. Although the problem is deepest in the South and the West, that's us, nearly every state has seen an uptick in price reductions compared with a year ago, according to Realtor.com. And we have always said Realtor.com, it's a great group, but they're pretty optimistic. In this case, they're just saying, hey, they're being realistic. We've had these kinds of cuts. Despite these warning signs, meaning pricing too high, seller confidence remains staggeringly high. I thought that was an interesting word. Staggeringly high, with 81% of potential home sellers predicting they would get their asking price or higher in a Realtor.com survey conducted in March. The rising share, where do you see this graph? The rising share of price reductions suggests that a lot of sellers are anchored to prices that aren't realistic in today's housing market, says Danielle Hell. She's the Realtor.com chief economist. So here we go. Here's what this is what it looks like. Overpriced. The darker is where it's really overpriced. People are hanging on to that, what I call hot market hangover. Because people will, and you know what? I think another part of this, it says nationally, 18% of listings saw, nationally, I'm going to repeat that, 18% of listings saw price reductions in April, the highest share for the month of April in records dating to 2016. Arizona and Florida led the nation in price reductions. What was Arizona? Boomtown. What was Florida? Boomtown. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. We just talked about Florida. That's the reason I brought that article up. Listing agents say that they hear unrealistic price expectations most frequently from sellers who bought their home during the frenzy of the COVID-19 pandemic era, hot market hangover, when bidding wars were common. I mean, this really gets to the point of, this is where I live. This is the facts as far as I'm concerned. While market conditions have changed, most of those sellers likely have healthy equity following a surge in home prices. Most of the time, even if they decrease their price by 10 or 20%, they're going to walk away with a massive pocket full unless they HELOC the hell out of it. They're going to gain handsomely on the sale even if they don't achieve the price of their dreams. Even after... Wait, okay, I'll come back to you, Angie. I got that question. Even after setting a more grounded price, they're likely to walk away from a sale. Even after setting a more grounded price, they are likely to walk away from a sale with good money in their pocket because and I've seen that happen. And that's where HDTV and all those kinds of things, they don't help people with that. One of the biggest the pieces of damage, if you will, that I see HDTV do, and you can see it when you go look at houses. HDTV shows houses getting fixed up and stuff, and there's a lot of DIY stuff going on. On TV, they can look pretty good, but have you ever gone into a house where it's DIY and it's like not very good?
Well, they all are not very good. I mean, it's you know, the DIY shows end in 30 minutes with a completed house, and when you put regular people in there and contractors that don't show up, it takes months. It's awful. You know, that's why you've said it a million times. Your property needs to be ready for listed. I mean, ready to sell when it goes on the market. It needs to be in great condition.
Yeah,
And
move in ready, baby. Move in ready.
yeah.
That's what people want. I'm going to jump over here to Angie's question. So how do you figure out what your actual price per, aha. Okay. This is just my opinion. You're in California. I'm in Brentwood, Tennessee. I never price per square foot. That I find that to be, some people live on that. I don't. And here's the reason. You can have a 3,000 square foot house with gold plating and quartz and the nicest appliances and the just tricked out on that 3,000 square feet. I mean, nice, move in ready to perfection. And then you can take that same 3,000 square feet and have it builder grade. It's the same square footage, but the value per square foot is going to be way different. It's going to be the size and the condition and the location that creates that pricing, in my opinion, period. That's my view. Because people will go on Zillow and they have to leave that price per square foot on a large sampling. If we were to look at Williamson County and assess what it sells for as a county, or even Brentwood as a city, large samplings with price per square foot then has some meaning to it. But when you isolate it down to a particular specific house, in my opinion, it loses all meaning because you can't account. I get that. It also depends on quality, but you have to have a starting point. Yes. And the starting point, that's correct, in your neighborhood with a house that has, if you got 3 bedrooms, look at 3 bedrooms. If it's 3,000 square foot, look at 3,000 plus or minus 10%. In terms of age, there's a thing called effective date. If you've got an older house, but it's been fixed up, the effective date it can be built in the 80s, but the effective date can be in the 2000s very easily. So you just have to, what I would suggest is getting a pro there that sells a lot of houses and does comps. You've got to have comps that are meaningful in your area. And that's the starting point. And then you can get in, and if yours is like way better, you kind of add a little here and add a little there. That's how you do that. It's that's what I would suggest. It's got a comp, square footage, location, and condition. There's probably more, I mean, out in California, if you live on the ocean, that changes the rules, but from a basic sense, I think that's what you're asking. That's where I would start. And I tell you what, doing comps, it's as much as an art as it is a science. It is as much, it's as much of an art as it is a science. So you have to toy with it a little bit. Anyway, moving on. However, for home sellers accustomed to the soaring home value, the pandemic era housing boom, the new reality of flat or softening prices and weak demand can be a bitter pill to swallow. However, overpricing your home based on a gut feeling or wishful thinking can be a bad mistake. I'm telling you, don't do that. I can't pronounce his name, a listing specialist says that she frequently encounters sellers who mistakenly believe that routine cosmic Cosmetic updates such as fresh paint or new molding will command a significant price premium over other homes in the area. They very much think that their property is better than everyone else's, she says. On HGTV, when you landscape and paint and add new light fixtures, you just added 20 grand to your list, right? No, that's just not the way it works. She says, and in the current market, and this is important, cosmetic updates can help a home sell faster, but they're unlikely to raise the sales price. She is dead on. And that's why I picked this article. Unlike value-added features like a pool or a lakefront location, the listing agent says she works closely with sellers to set a realistic price at the outset and isn't averse, this is big, it isn't averse to turning down clients who won't budge on a price who won't budget on a price target that is out of reach. For sellers who price unrealistically, the consequence is often a listing that grows stale in around the market for an unusually long time despite multiple price reductions. Stale listings, you don't want that. Bottom line, I think this is the last, probably getting down to it. If you overprice your home, it's going to sit on the market and it's going to get stale, and then you're going to be chasing their price down to where the market's willing to pay for it. And that's where you're bargaining with the seller to get them to buy it. You really don't want to get there. So that's part of that shift. And that's why I thought this article was interesting. For all of that, the listing inventory, here's the deal. And Terry DeSelms taught me, and you've taught me this too, Rodney. Every single house on the market will sell at the right price, period. No exceptions, And it's just, if the seller doesn't want to capitulate to that lower price, it'll sit. And so I'm telling you, the overall message to this show today is that all that extra inventory that those maps are showing, it is because the bottom line, the seller hasn't gotten realistic about the price yet. So we made it.
Made it.
And look at that. Time to go.
Right on
any
time.
Final thoughts? Do you have any expectations coming up this week? What should we be looking forward to this week in the lending industry?
Well, I'm a little out of touch this week because I got another graduation. I got my son graduating from high school. Last week I had one graduating from UT. So this week I got high school. So outside of that, I'm not paying attention much to the market. I'm trying to get these boys graduated and get them situated.
Yep. Well, we are out of here. Ange, thanks for being here. Rodney, thank you for all of that. And we'll see y'all next week. Okay? See you, Rodney.
See you.